We are going to discuss the dreaded Works Cited page. Now, before you freak out, remember that we live in the incredibly connected age of information where all expectations for something like this are incredibly easy to find. So fear not, we'll take this at a reasonable pace in this class, and you will all be masters of this by the end of the year. But first, let's establish why we need to include works cited pages when writing papers. The first reason is that it lends authority and credibility to your work. It proves that you've not simply written a paper off the top of your head. You need to show that you've done the proper research and prove to your reader that you should be taken seriously on this subject. When you write a paper, you put yourself out there as an expert on the topic, believe it or not, that you've chosen to write about. At least that's how I'm going to view you as the reader of your paper. And if you turn in a paper, I expect that you have poured some time and effort into understanding the subject. And I want to believe what you say. I want to take your paper at face value. But no reader, including myself, can do that if we don't know where you got your information. You need to include it in a works cited page so we can believe you and take you seriously. Also, take your role as a writer as a responsibility. When you turn in a paper, you make a claim that you understand a subject. So show your reader that you have made an effort to understand your topic as best you can by thoroughly researching it. Your works cited page is like the proof that you've done that. Next, it allows your readers to cross-reference your sources, which basically means it allows your readers to go to your sources to see where you found your information. You need to allow your reader the chance to see where you got all of your info. Your readers will then have a chance to decide if they can actually trust your sources or not. Sometimes sources can be biased or have a certain view on a topic, and if your reader thinks that you've cited sources that are known for viewing a topic from a certain angle, that may affect their view of your argument. I know this may sound like you're setting yourself up for failure by doing this, but this is actually one of the best things you can do for your paper. First of all, it encourages dialogue and leads to effective communication and discussions that can bring clarity to certain arguments, something we can lack in this day and age. Also, even if your reader disagrees with your conclusions on a subject, that doesn't mean that you're a bad writer. So include your sources and get a discussion going about your topic. Even if someone disagrees with you, this could be an eye-opening experience for both sides, and it could result in, yes, us being more empathetic towards one another. Next, you need a works cited page so you can acknowledge your academic debts. This simply means to admit that you don't know everything, because believe it or not, you don't know everything. If you used a book, movie, or a website to help you write your paper, then essentially you've taken someone else's information and applied it to your writing. I mean, that stuff didn't come off the top of your head. You had to get that information somewhere. You had to absorb that knowledge somewhere. And this is totally okay. It's essential for your paper. But you must let your reader know which ideas you've used that did not originate in your brain. It's a practice in being open and honest. You don't know everything, and it's important to admit it. Your reader doesn't need you to be omniscient, just an honest writer and researcher. Finally, you need a works cited page to avoid plagiarism. This is when you take someone else's ideas or work and try to pass them off as your own. This is something you need to avoid if you are to become an effective writer. Sometimes students will fall into this trap because they feel like they don't have enough original ideas, or they're running out of time, or they even try to sneak it in under the radar to lighten the workload of writing a paper. First of all, don't try this in class. We have programs and resources here at school that are going to catch it. Second, plagiarizing will not help you out in the long run. You need to become an effective writer in this day and age when it is so essential to be an effective communicator. Don't prolong your journey of getting there. Work on becoming a better writer now so you don't have to resort to cheating later. It will inevitably cause more stress for you down the line. This is where the works cited page comes in and is a really effective thing for you to include in these papers. It's a way for you to stand on your own arguments and your own facts because you've paid those academic debts. The works cited page declares that this is your original paper and these are ideas that you took from other sources. Again, it's totally okay to use ideas from other people and places, but you need to be upfront about it. Use a works cited page to highlight the difference between your ideas and someone else's. It's only a problem when you don't cite other sources at all. So how do we put these together? Well, yet again, the Purdue OWL website is great for the works cited page as well. we'll throw up the link, and this is the best way to figure out how to cite different types of sources. So if you have kind of an obscure type of source, this is the website to go to make sure that you are citing it correctly. And it's especially good to bookmark this page because sometimes the rules change from year to year. So you might be working with a slightly edited version of MLA format now than you will a couple years from now. But I'm going to walk you through right now 2 examples of how to cite 2 different types of sources, just to get you started on the whole process.
So I'm going to give you a few examples on how to cite some particular sources and then talk about the general guidelines of how you want to structure all of your citations. Let's just start by looking at a normal book. If I wanted to cite Lord of the Flies in my Works Cited page, I would structure it like this. And nearly all of this information can be found in the front of the book or near the title page. So our Lord of the Flies citation would look like this in the Works Cited page. You start with the author's name with the last name first with a comma, and then the first name, so Golding William, period. The title of the book, Lord of the Flies, period. The publisher, Penguin Group USA, with a comma afterwards, and everything from this point now has a comma following it. So the year of publication, right, and at the end, you want to make sure that you put a period after the entire thing. So let's do the same thing with a web article. I have one here by a writer named David Sims at The Atlantic about bad movies. If I wanted to cite this article, it would go like this. So we're working with the same thing here. We have the author name, last name, first name, the name of the article in quotations. Then we have the title of the container, which is the publication in which it was published, the publishing group, the date that the article was published, a URL for the article. And you'll see here that I actually used a tiny URL, a shortened URL, just to make it a little bit easier for my reader, and the date I accessed the article with a period at the end. These are 2 really good examples, but I do want to give you a general outline of how to cite really any type of source. So here's a list of the order of elements in a citation for you to reference in developing your citation for a particular source. So you always start with the author, last name, comma, first name, period. The title of the source. So that could be the book name or the website name. That's usually in italics or quotation marks based on what type of source it is. You'll put the name of the source followed by a period. Title of container refers to the large hole in which you found the source. So this would be as if you took like a poem from a collection of poems or a short story from a collection of short stories, maybe an episode of a TV show from a TV series, or an episode of a podcast from a podcast series. It also might be the website in which you found an article. So you want to write this down. Typically, it's italicized and it's followed by a comma. If there are any other contributors, this is where you want to give them credits. So for instance, if the book was originally written in another language and there was a translator, this is where you would want to give them credits. Or if there was an illustrator that you reference in the book, this would be the best place to put it. Or if there was an editor that kind of put the collection together, this is where those citations would go. Next is version. So if it's like an edition or the version of a work, you need to include that in the citation. Number would be if the source is part of a sequence. So if it's a particular issue or a particular volume, that number needs to be listed in the citation. The publisher is the company or the publishing house that distributes the source out there to the world. So your publisher's name needs to be there. So that would be like in the Lord of the Flies citation, the Penguin House USA citation. Publication date, this is when the work went out to the public. So you'll usually find that somewhere in the front cover of the book. You'll find it on an article. And if you are using a more kind of obscure source, this is something you might have to research a little bit on the internet to find when your source was released to the public. If you're citing like a YouTube video, for instance, all of those videos will have their date of publication on there. So that's where you need to put the publication dates.
Now, location is where you found your source. So this would be like when you're citing a web article, this is where you would put the URL, like in my web article example. But it doesn't just apply for website articles. If your source was an essay in the middle of a book, you would need to put page numbers there. If it was an article in a journal, it should also include the page number. So you just need to be as specific as possible when talking about the location of your work, so that if someone wants to cross-reference your sources, they're able to find it very easily.
And you'll notice on the list that everything other than the author and the title of the source, everything else needs to be separated by a comma until the very end when you end it with a period. If you use this list as a guideline, you pretty much can't go wrong. But if you have any other questions, feel free to ask me, or feel free to check out the Purdue OWL page for this information. They have a lot of other pages that you can access about very specific types of sources. So if you're using a source that you think is a little bit obscure or a different type of source, consult the Purdue OWL page, because it's probably got what you're looking for, and you can really just follow their guidelines and you'll be home free.